And we're back. Okay.
Thanks for your patience.
So we did start the meeting at 6 o'clock, and for those of you just joining us, we had a little technical difficulty to get the YouTube channel going, so we are up and going now. Yes? Okay. So we've gone through item number 7, and we're on to item number 8 for reports. Our audit report for fiscal year 20. Barry is here from Hoffman Probst, and I understand that his PowerPoint is also on the website if those of you distance would like to follow along. So welcome, Barry.
You guys all have copy of this, road book and an audit report also. Okay. I'm basically just gonna focus on the shorter PowerPoint presentation rather than going through the 82 pages of the audit. But if there are specific questions on anything in the audit, we have to answer them. So we go to the first page, the district highlights. You were budgeted to have a deficit of about $98,000 in the general fund for 2020. The actual results were that you were positive by $387,000. Basically, the revenues were, I want to say, like within $20,000 of the budget. So I mean, revenues were exactly what you expected would be. The difference of roughly $480,000 was really a reduction in expenditures. And if you go through the financial statements and you look line by line, there's no one line item that is really significant, but there are smaller savings in almost all line items. And simple things like not having to hire a sub for the last 3 months of the school year, not having to pay referees, some utility savings, cleaning supply savings, not having to clean as often. I mean, it was just small savings all the way through, basically due to the school building being closed for those about 2.5 months. It's hard to remember that long ago when all this started. So what was expected to be, a break even to a little bit of a loss year actually turned out to be much better. That leaves your unassigned fund balance at about 24.6% of annual budget expenditures, which is about double what your goal is. So financially in good shape. One of the things that ends up happening is we have to, if you're projecting a deficit for the next year, we have to assign a portion of your fund balance to cover that deficit, because it's as if by approving the budget, you've already spent that money, so to say. So the deficit is projected to be $35,000 more than it was the previous year, to $82,000. And the reason, the $98,000 at the top was a revised budget at the, some time in the middle of the year. When standing here last year at this time, 80 minus 35 was what the projected budget was. Deficit. The next page, long verbiage here, but bottom line is accounting standards require that the student activity funds be consolidated into the general fund. And what that ended up doing was creating a fund balance increase of $133,000. And so that was done as a prior period adjustment, so it just restated your beginning fund balance. And it doesn't affect the unreserved fund balance that I just spoke about, because this is considered a restricted fund balance. It's restricted to the student activity accounts. You did enter in a capital lease agreement for some technology of $67,000. You also refinanced $840,000 of the OPEB bonds, which resulted in a present value savings of about $62,000 by going through the refunding. As I discussed, COVID-19 played a factor in 1920, somewhat showing a downward trend, which obviously has a effect on your decision making and budget decisions. Accordingly. So we look at the graphs, and the blue is the ending fund balance, the red is the adjusted cash balance, and not so much necessarily looking at any individual year, but the trend is you were kind of holding your own for 4 years, and because of the savings that I spoke about, you've actually increased a little bit here in 2020 from the previous years in both cash and fund balance. The next slide really just emphasizes your finances are really heavily dependent upon what the state legislature approves for your funding. 78% of the revenues of the school come from the state. So a large share, and obviously with the effects of COVID, at the state level also, not sure where they're going to go with funding in the future. And the 2019, I think the percentages of the pie are exactly the same in 19 as in 20, so nothing changed regarding funding. We always point out that the revenue from federal sources is about 4%, and although that's a small amount of your percentage of income, there end up being a lot of compliance requirements associated with receiving that 4%, so it does generate a fair amount of work. And the next page, still talking about the general fund revenues by source, and really you can see that more than anything else, they've been rather consistent. Essentially, the decline in enrollment has been offset by the small percentage increases in general education each year, so that general education aid, so they can remain relatively flat over that 5-year period. And then we talk about the expenditures by object code, which really, yours is a little bit different than a lot of districts, because under the purchase services section, there is a lot of wages paid to essentially MVCC for your teachers, but they get coded as a purchase service because they're run through MVCC. Busing's also in there, so it isn't just MVCC, but really, if you are to look at that in true terms, this shows salary and wages and benefits at about 56%. If you actually combine those in MVCC, you're going to be over 70%. And so it really just emphasizes the fact that salaries and wages are the largest expense of the district. And again, the next page just kind of shows that graphic, which is to purchase services, client wages, and fringe benefits being the largest expenses. And then the next graph really shows the expenditures by the type of services you're providing. And I always find this one very informative, because as we talk about declining enrollment, and you guys have been through this several times, where you're looking at having to reduce expenditures, the vast majority of all your expenditures come from regular instruction and exceptional instruction. next page just gives a little bit, hard to present an audit report without being talking about some actual pages with numbers on them. And so, looking at the general fund over the 4-year period, as I kind of said earlier, you know, you look at 18, 19, and 20, and revenues basically flat, 9.6 million all 3 years. So a little bit higher in 2017. And then you look at the trend also, you look at 18 expenditures, and then 19 you reduce those, and then in 20 you reduce them even further, so that you were, in 17 you had a positive, you were negative in 18 and 19, and then by the reduction of expenditures in 20 you turned out positive again. The food service fund balance increased 63,000. Basically, it was at about 7,000, and most years you would have a $10,000 to $20,000 loss in food service that the general fund then would transfer over to cover that loss. That's part of another one of the reasons why the general fund did a little better than expected, is it did not have to be transferred to food service this year. And almost all of that was due to the increase in 63. I think it's, you received roughly $146,000 in additional federal aid for the summer lunch program, which really created most of the difference. If you look at the rest of the income and expenses in the food service fund, that's the only area that is a huge increase in the revenues. And the community service fund increased by about $11,000. And so it was a little additional ECFE funding. Pool had a little larger deficit, and obviously there's a decrease in community ed classes during the year. So the fund balance at the end of 2019, June 30 is $295,000. The debt service fund, revenues exceeded expenditures by 3,456, and that's just somewhat based on, you're just allowed to levy slightly over what your actual debt payments are, just to cover any unexpected costs. The OPEB debt service fund had a modest increase of $2,154. The OPEB revocable trust, which is used to pay for retiree health insurance, collected $98,000 from retiree contributions and
anyone have any questions for Barry? I'm not hearing any, so thank you very much for doing that and
Thank you.
presenting it tonight. Okay, next item is 8.2, district report with Mr. Schneider.
Okay, as you can see, I added a little bit to my report. Of course, now I get popped out of it, so 1 second. My computer's not cooperating tonight.
A little technical difficulty.
So feel free to interrupt me and ask questions here. We'll talk about the staffing here in a little bit when we talk about personnel. We currently have, this was as of yesterday, 60 students signed up for Sting Care. I don't know if you folks heard today, but Puddle Jumpers closed for a period of time because of at least one case out there. So we'll have to kind of watch that. If they're close contacts, obviously we do not want them in our Sting Care. So we'll do the best we can to monitor that. Distance learning, as of Friday, we had 26 BRE students and 74 middle school, high school students that had elected for distance learning. Now I know everybody's in distance learning last week and this week, but that just gives you an idea. Policy committee is scheduled to meet November 16th. That will be Jeremy LeBlanc and Sonia Peterson. So if you have questions or things, I'll begin working on that right away tomorrow and see if I can make some headway. I don't know if you folks have seen it out in our playground here, the game that was built by Patrick Herneman as part of an Eagle Scout project. Have you folks seen that out there?
I have
It's
not.
kind of, what's it, is it 8-sided? Is that correct? I think it's an 8-sided
so.
figure. And it's a new game called Gaga. He did this as part of his Eagle Scout project, and you know, I think he gained a lot from it. Obviously, we gained a playing ground, playing area there also. So I think he demonstrated a lot of leadership skills and skills that are going to likely serve him well in the future. So kudos to him for that.
Just one question about that. Is it permanent?
Yes. They originally asked me to do if they could just do it in sand, and so thank goodness he was able to kind of get some donations and some assistance from some contractors, and now it's a concrete playing surface. So it's great. COVID data update. So I attached information that I shared out last week and with the ICT. If you had a chance to listen to the governor's presentation on Friday, or it was sent out to you again later on Friday and again today, he emphasized how quickly the virus is spreading and the concern about the number of beds that are currently occupied. Numbers in Yellow Medicine, Chippewa, and Renville counties continue to increase. So we know that Chippewa actually went down for a short bit, but now they're starting to climb back up. I've been communicating with you about the Minnesota State High School League fees, and there was a superintendent from Springfield that has given us a resolution that we could pass. He has now turned around and asked that we do not pass that resolution yet until we are billed or invoiced for the amount that he is proposing, or they are proposing. And the hopes, Mr. Kecke's hopes are that the Minnesota State High School League might re-examine whether it was a fair and equitable distribution of that expense. So a new executive order explanation. So that came out on Thursday, and then they already amended it again on Friday. So there's 3 big areas here that we will notice. One area is the instructional day must include 30 minutes per day to allow reasonable teacher preparation for any teacher providing distance or hybrid instruction. I've met with the Education Minnesota, and we've talked about that. They feel that what we have for preparation built into our Friday afternoons is adequate. We'll kind of shift around our PLCs, but we have 3 hours set aside there to meet that expectation. They were clear when we received a follow-up email too, that it's per day, not each day, meaning that we can accumulate those 5 days of 30 minutes and put it all on Friday. So at this point, I know some of you had asked me about that. Is that you folks understand that?
So we're okay
We should be okay.
by adjusting it to allow them that Friday.
That Friday will suffice. We do not have to give them more time.
Who gave that clarification? Because
The MDE, Minnesota Department of Education. Number 2, strongly encourages district to consult with their local bargaining unit to allow teachers to provide asynchronous teaching to students learning in person and remotely. It only strongly encourages. Again, when I talked to the EMYME, they thought what we were doing will suffice. We'll continue to monitor that. We are going to get more direction, they're saying, by the end of the week. Hopefully we do get that direction. Then number 3 is school districts moving some or all grades to distance learning might prioritize in-person instruction for students with disabilities, English learners, students experiencing homelessness, students in foster care, and students who are struggling academic, as long as there is not evidence of widespread COVID-19 transmission in the building. So each of the principals will take a look at this and assess what's fair and equitable here. I talk about that fair and equitable again in the last sentence there. What they're looking at is we want to identify those students that need the most intensive support and have demonstrated through data that they were not successful last spring. Questions about anything on the new executive order? Originally, they had said that we would have to have implemented that today, and they have kicked the can down the road, and we're asking for even further clarification. So we have all the way through November 30th.
so are we working on plans for items 2 and 3 and how to manage those, or do we have solutions for those already?
Well, 2, we don't necessarily have to address because it's strongly encouraged. All right? 3, we are working on. So I think probably that's a principal by principal discussion, and if you want, they can probably report on that.
Okay.
And that allows those students to be in the building.
Yes, a limited number. Now, one thing to keep in mind that we have to consider, one part that's in there is staff availability. So if the staff aren't able to be here, and there's a variety of reasons they might not be here, might be their own health or things like that, that could impact that decision. And it should be done on a student-by-student basis. Last week was a little different. We did bring students in, but the problem was staffing, not COVID outbreak. I think people would love a black and white. This is the standard. This is what we're going to do. It's pretty hard to come up with that. That clear up that question?
What were we short for staffing?
Oh, it kind of varied by day, but at the beginning of last week, we were at least 8 staff short. Mental health resources, I know that's been a big emphasis out there. There are concerns, and rightly so, but our psychologists and social workers, Amy Anguser, Tammy Caruth, and Sue Bones, along with the administrators, have met a few times to discuss us what we can do. They have created a website of resources. They are reaching out to parents. Please refer those students either to the social workers, psychologists, or the building principals, and we will try and connect them with that. We do currently have Western Mental Health providing school-based services at YME. Now, school-based services doesn't mean it's free. It would be charged back to their health insurance. All right, and distance learning coordinator, we have Stacy Hens is willing to present next month on some things that are happening great in the classrooms by some of our teachers or many of our teachers. We have a lot to be proud of. I appreciate you being willing to expend money on those items. So, determine the learning model for the school year. I know that's one of the things that we have talked about, that why do we have this incident command team, and I think we'll talk about that again during the discussion item. So I do have some information that directly from the Safe Learning Plan when that time comes. Any questions for me, or?
Any questions for Mr. Schneider? Hearing none, thank you very much for that. Next up is Mrs. Hanson with the Burt Rainey Elementary report.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I will start off with just briefly discussing our staff development that was held on Friday, November 6th. There was definitely a full day of activity at Burt, with the Thursday night announcement that distance learning is being extended. Staff knew they definitely had their work cut out for them on Friday, as they managed to pull off our distance learning materials, prep, first quarter grades, and report cards. Definitely a productive and very busy day. Want to just touch base on a few pieces about distance learning at Burt Rainey. First of all, what has changed at Burt in the area of distance learning from the spring? I would say that we are definitely better at organizing and providing distance learning instruction for our students. We are very fortunate to have Stacy Hens as our distance learning coordinator.
Lisa, is your mic on there? There we go.
Want me to start over?
You're good.
Okay.
That's fine.
We are very fortunate to have Stacy Hens as our distance learning coordinator. She is on the go nonstop, helping teachers figure out how to integrate technology into their lessons. She fields questions from parents and also helps troubleshoot our technology when things are not working as we want them to. We have also been able to pull together and organize all of our grade level Zooms. And just a reminder that BERT is a combination of online distance learning and hands-on distance learning, which does involve packets of materials that are sent home each week. So for example, today was material distribution. Parents show up on the north side of 7th Avenue, staff are there. All of their materials are organized by classroom. A parent or guardian shows up, one of my staff members goes out to them and delivers the materials and also collects anything from the week prior. All items that come back to BERT are identified by a red sticker or a colored circle of some sort, and so that's really how we've helped our parents identify what to return to the school. Also, all students in grades K through 5 were issued a device, technically offered a device, and I quick scanned our inventory list today, and it appears that only approximately 20 students did not take a district device, and we were actually strongly encouraging them and parents to take one for a couple reasons. Number one, the students are used to using that device in the classroom. All of their logins are there. We know the software works, the Seesaw, Google Classroom, all of the shortcuts are there. And a lot of the troubleshooting that we deal with over the phone has been coming from homes that did not take a school-issued device. But again, it was just a few short of 20 that did not take the district device. We were also able to pull together acceptable use policies and insurance information for all of the families, which I know was most likely a information overload. But I just want to extend a huge kudos to all of my paraprofessionals and my assistants, Nicole Kotek, Julie Poff, and Angie Olson, for really taking the lead in getting those items and paperwork out and organized. Another thing with all of our students now having a device, each grade level is able to provide at least 2 Zoom classes a day, some of which may be recorded and uploaded so working families can view later. The length of those Zooms do vary by grade level. Many teachers are also doing small groups on Zooms beyond their main lessons and also providing time for students to ask questions. They set up individual meeting times, etc., for support. We're also utilizing our paraprofessionals to do that as well, and they are doing a lot of Zooms with students. Just kind of just a tidbit, a little trivia. One thing that I've noticed a lot last week at BERT is the creation of signs hanging on closed classroom doors. Please do not disturb Zoom meeting or recording in progress. Because as you can imagine, most of us are used to just charging right in, and now we have discovered they might either be trying to record something to upload, or they're in the middle of a live class. Some feedback that we have received, some parents have expressed some frustration that it's been too much work for their elementary students, and that really has made us take a step back and look at quality over quantity, and we're trying really hard to emphasize to parents that if they are spending a lot of time in the evenings doing schoolwork, to please contact either the teacher or myself, because we are definitely here to work with them, and we want to create a distance learning situation that does not create a lot of added stress in the home. As you know, we use Seesaw, and I pulled some stats today. It continues to see record numbers each week. For the week of November 2nd through the 9th, we had 1,230 items posted on Seesaw, and that would be coming either from staff or students. And we had 746 parent visits during that time. When I look at the stats, our weekly parent engagement has consistently gone up each week, with the exception of MEA week, and that has been ranging from 200 visits each week in early October to close to 800 this week. I want to extend a thank you to Beth Jan for being our Seesaw ambassador. She has taken on this role and has definitely succeeded all of my expectations. She really is the reason this program was rolled out so efficiently to parents, and she is the reason that our teachers feel so comfortable using it, and they often go to her with questions. So I do want to thank Mrs. Jan, especially if she's listening tonight, for all of her extra efforts. American Education Week is scheduled for next week, on November 16th through the 20th. However, with distance learning now being scheduled, we are looking at all of our options, which we're looking at a couple different variations, and they are not finalized yet. Looking at doing some things possibly virtually with the students or pushing it out until the students are back in the building. As you probably can recall, we often have a full week of activities during American Education Week at BERT. Veterans Day is another activity that will not be held while we are in distance learning. Classroom teachers have each been tasked with incorporating a lesson or lessons about Veterans Day into their day on Wednesday or throughout this week. A few of the things that are being done include online stories. Scholastic News offers some online versions. A grade level is doing a patriotic ribbon activity that will encourage students to share the activity with a family member who is a veteran. And in music class, they're going to be hearing and working with patriotic songs. I am also hoping to post an old Veterans Day program that we uploaded to YouTube in, I believe, 2015. And that features second graders in 2015 singing Thank a Vet. And so look for that to be published on social media on Wednesday. The day will certainly not be the same as if we were in person, but we are going to make sure we recognize our veterans and take some time to reflect on that day. Questions for me?
You want to kind of give them a highlight of what you're talking about as it pertains to in-person learning for special ed or?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that we're working on at Burt Rainey is finalizing our criteria for how to bring or how to determine which students that are on an IEP, ELL, homeless, or foster children, determining who and how they are being brought into the building. And so my special ed team and I, we had a couple more meetings today. We have finalized some of our criteria, but basically it looks similar to what I would call a flow chart. It's kind of a if then, now you do this, if not, do this. We'll be really looking at how and what type of progress they made last spring during distance learning. We'll be looking at any roadblocks that they may have encountered then, or maybe they were very successful in the spring but are struggling now because things change from spring to fall. We are also taking a look at staff capacity, transportation, on-site locations, food service, paraprofessional availability, and then also identifying how much time those children will be invited in. So for example, it might be that Johnny is invited in for 1 hour a day to take care of his math service time in special ed, because maybe that's an area that he's really struggling with, but he's done very well with reading or with his literacy. And so it really comes down to being individualized plans for all of the students. The reality is that we will not be able to bring all of them in. We just do not have the capacity. So we are working really hard to prioritize and to try and meet the needs of as many students as we can. Questions on that?
Understanding that's a big task, how long do you think it will take to make those decisions?
Our goal is, so I feel like our criteria is close to being finalized. I would say we have a very solid draft of that. Hoping tomorrow to finalize a few details Cindy Lowe and I had visited about, and our school psychologist and I. Also, the special ed teachers have all seen it and are reviewing it again. I am hopeful that by the end of the week, we would at least be able to invite what I would consider our top priority students in for next week. I'll be honest, I really want us to start slow and make sure that we have the staff capacity for that. It's really important, but today we had so many staff that were maybe all of a sudden quarantined, or we got notification early this morning that they couldn't be in. And we would need to really make sure that we have staffing in place to help support those students. So I'm hoping by next week we'd be able to roll out that first group of students coming in.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mrs. Hanson? Okay, well, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Next up is Mr. Loft with the high school, middle school report.
All right, good evening, everyone. I want to start off by congratulating King Abel and Queen Allie Steffen for the 2020 homecoming, as well as the court that was up. Special thanks to Kim Hafer and Kari Coulter, who are our middle school and high school advisors, for doing what they could do during the homecoming 2020, and to also special thanks for Crystal. She does all the special effects and things. As many of you know, we did hold the coronation in the auxiliary gym, and we were able to display some of the cool things that we can do with the video boards behind them as the kids were coming in and out. So congratulations and thank you to everyone. At the end, Thursday was our end of a quarter here. So today is the beginning of the new quarter as we begin here at the Hive. As Mrs. Hanson said, American Education Week will look a little different here Next week, we do have details, and we will share some of those out on social media as well as the next board meeting. The Veterans Day program, we will obviously not hold our traditional in-person this year for it, but we do have things planned to push out on social media to recognize our veterans. And us too are fortunate that our music program put some things together as well to share out with them on social media. Fall conferences are coming up November 19th and 23rd. This year they'll be virtual. We have reached out to parents in the scheduling letter, and now that the quarter has ended and grades will be pushed out on Friday, just a reminder to get signed up. As you know, in the past, we've had in-person student-led conferences. Just to the logistics of everything, that will be virtually impossible. So parents will be able to go in and schedule meetings on both nights from 3:30 to 7:30 there virtually with their teachers at that time. I want to congratulate the 1920 Academic Award Honor winners at the bottom. Also, we are continuing on with special support from the Culture Club here at the middle school, high school, but also the Advocate Tribune downtown. This week, the Student of the Month will be published there, as well as on our social media. This month for September, winners were 6th grade, Maybe Left, Kendi Wagon, 7th grade, Reagan Strike, Nathan Johnson, 8th grade, Carter Canazzi, Kennedy LeBlanc, 9th grade, Jocelyn Jimenez, Jose Padilla, 10th grade, Sanjana Poland, Landon Anderson, 11th grade, Ty Steinbach, Adam Ludwig, Taryn Gatchell, Aurora Keller, and 12th grade, Cole Fisher and Chloe Van Sickle. September was nominated by the Social Studies Department. October will be wrapping up, and we'll be getting that out in the newspaper as well. Like I said, in there, report cards will be coming out. One thing we annually do that we do at the student-led conference is go over the STAR report. We did give the STAR report in September. We did see a little bit of a summer and a distance learning lag in there. So also too, we wanted to really explain, if you don't deal with the STAR report every day, there's a lot of technical language in there. So we put some just quick indicators for people. One is a chart. Which way is the chart going? What color is the dots? And where's my kid at right now? So just some things that are pushing out there. So any questions? Oh, then to update on the criteria here, just as Mrs. Hanson said, we get a little different issue here at the middle school and high school. Not all of our kids want to come every day. So when they're in distance learning, it's hard to get them in that. Right now our special ed team is working directly with the families and with the kids to see what their needs are. A lot of our parents are agreeing to coming in either a Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday. Also too, just wanted to pass on to the school board a special thank you for the updated schedule on Friday. Just sharing from staff that time is going to be invaluable moving forward. But also we want to make sure that isn't lost time. We have something that we're developing right now called the Learning Center, where we will be able to bring in students, either special ed or students at risk, to be able to come in and get some academic support with our liaisons and that type of stuff. So same thing too, our criteria is starting to look at. The big thing we look at here is services that are very difficult to do over distance learning. But secondly, we look at obviously attendance, missing assignments, and then overall grades is determining that. And we meet actually internally. It's called our second line of defense. So we really want to support our teachers in there. It's Erica Leos, Mike Toole, Sue Bones, Berta Berkasset, and Adam Savriago. We meet weekly and talk about our kids to see, mainly thing, attendance, missing work. Like if we can get that type of stuff out and get to the actual missing assignments and things that are turned in, it gives us a better overall picture of what's going on. So, questions?
I got a question. So the team you just talked about that's making those decisions, does that involve the special ed team as well? I didn't hear that any names from the special
Yes,
ed
for
team.
the special ed students, yes. That they are met, we meet usually weekly or bi-weekly on that, especially now under the new executive order where we can bring kids in.
Mm-hmm.
So right now they are contacting their families to see who wants to come in, who doesn't want to come in, what best works for their kid.
Okay.
So
Are you using any criteria from last spring's data to help determine that list of
no,
kids that you're contacting?
more for the special ed kids, it's more of a conversation what works for them. So.
Okay. So how long do you think before we have a decision on, just like I asked Ms. Hanson, how long before your time frame where you'll know how your staff will be able to make that happen?
Well, we already have a couple kids in. We have one program that we deemed right away high need. So we had one teacher contact them right away because the services would be virtually impossible to deliver over distance learning. After that, it'll be next week.
Okay.
So the same type of timeline. It's more about communication piece. We're ready to go with it. As Mrs. Hanson said too, some of it depends on our staffing availability of who's here and who's not here. So, and last week we had quite a few of our paraprofessionals who were not able to be in the building. We were still able to do distance learning because our kids not being here, they're still able to get on the Zooms. It's more about the physical supervision of them if they do come into the building.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Luft? Not hearing
Thank
any,
you.
so thank you very much. Next item is our celebrations and recognitions. We'll start with the ones from Burt Rainey Elementary. So thank you to all of the YME paraprofessionals that have worked at Sting Care, with a special thank you to Angie Olson and Casey Finken for your extra coordination and organization. Thank you to BRE staff members who are quarantined and continue to work from home to serve our students under less than ideal conditions. Thank you to BRE parents for assisting your children with distance learning and for being so efficient in picking up materials and devices this last week at BRE. A sincere appreciation for the district's incident command team, who volunteers their time and energy every Thursday night to review data, collaborate with experts, and give input on decisions that are often not popular. Thank you to Rory Bennett for keeping BRE up to date on the constant changes to bus schedules and transportation details. You help BRE make sure our students are picked up and dropped off safely. From the middle school, high school, Carrie Eichens, Shelley Weir, and Tabitha Jaden, thank you to them for coming in each morning and working in the morning breakfast shift to make sure our students have the opportunity to get a free breakfast. And thank you to Marlos LaCroix, Megan DeCam, and Dawn Rupp and her team for working extra hard to make sure our students and families are well taken care of. And thank you to Bennett and Bennett for their can-do attitudes with many different adjustments happening to the daily and weekly schedules. And thank you to the YME School Board for your support for Virtual Learning Fridays in the middle school, high school. The staff has shared many positive comments on the adjustment to the schedule. Thank you to Kim Hafer and Kari Coulter for doing what they could for Homecoming 2020, and to Crystal Eniga for their digital work behind the scenes to make the events look super great. As far as the district recognitions and celebrations, thank you to the YME substitutes that have graciously helped us out. Your help is critical to our ability to function both in person, in hybrid, or in distance learning. And special thanks to our parents for their tolerance of the many changes. We understand how difficult this has been on you and your students, and your continued support is much greatly appreciated. Okay, next up is committee reports. I'm not sure that there were any committee meetings since last month. Next item is World's Best Workforce Report. Mr. Schneider will present that.
So this is a rough draft, and it's due. I kind of waited off to fill this out until I got better guidance from the state, but so far it's not forthcoming. I was told a month ago I'd have it in a week, so I'm going to go forward with it and try and meet the demands of this requirement. It's in statute. I'm not going to go through it all in detail. It's very similar to last year. I did tweak a little bit to add a few things that I thought were important, such as listing our mission and vision. And my intent is to present this to the public via Zoom on November 23rd at 6 p.m., unless you guys see that that's a bad time. You folks do not have to be there. It's a public meeting. So if you have reservations with that, please let me know. It'd be best if it were yet tonight so I can publish it tomorrow. So it kind of reviews what is in the World's Best Workforce, the origin of that. We talk about some of the goals. So I am on, sorry, I should have put page numbers on page 5 where it talks about all students ready for school. In 1920, that would be last fall. This is a report for last year. So it's a summary of how we did last year, and I do integrate a little bit about what you have coming forward. 67% of our kindergartners came prepared or ready based upon that document there. All students ready for school, so again, we will continue with that goal again, so that's on page 6. Page 7, all students in third grades achieving grade level literacy. That is measured by the MCA. Last spring we did not administer that MCA. So instead this year we will continue that. 50% of students in third grade will be proficient, so we'll continue that going into this year. But a supporting goal is our QComp goal, the percentage of students in grades 2 through 5 at or above grade level, and the STAR reading assessment will increase 3% from the winter to the spring. So, close the achievement gaps among all groups. The reason that's in red is because I have none of that data. The MCA was not conducted. So really, that's going to be a hard one to channel and to assess. So we will have to see what they give us for guidance, so that may change. But that's one of those areas I could not really come up with something else for that. All students, so World's Best Workforce Area 4, page 10. All students career and college ready. 90% of students in the class of 2020 will attend their senior meeting. And so we actually had a result of 41 of 44 met with the success coach. That was with Robin Henderson last fall. So that's 93.2%. Of that, one was a dropout, one reclassified. So there is some of that to be expected there. World's Best Workforce Goal Area 5 is increase the graduation rate in 2019 to 95%. That's what we had last year. We were at actually 94.6. That was reported in February, I believe it was. So 53 of our 56 seniors from 2019. That's how far this is behind, because it takes a while for them to get everything right. Projected, what we had approximately 41 of 43 graduated, so that would be 95.3, but that is not a final number for 2020. We will keep that goal going forward, and in 2020, which already happened, it was 95%. We'll see where we come in. We are a school that participates in achievement and integration, and so there's several areas that we have to address. Goal area 1 for, so I'm on page 14 here. Goal area 1 at A and 1B, depending upon the two buildings, we did not take the MCA. So again, we could not address that. So for this year, the Achievement and Integration Committee met, and what they had recommended, and now we can write it for a 3-year time frame. The percentage of students completing grade 11 earning credit in 2 or more CTE or college level courses will increase from 80% in 2020, so this is a 3-year long range goal, to 90%. So we want all of those juniors to have some experience in something career related, and that could be a college course or a CTE course. Achievement Integration Goal Area 2, 70% of Yellow Medicine East students in grades 9 through 12 will attain career and post readiness by June 2020. And as you can see the trend there, last year we had 90.9%, 40 of 44 students. So of that, that didn't matriculate, 1 went to the military, 3 were undecided, and of that 3 undecided, 1 returned. So pretty good numbers for our students matriculating, going on to college. Goal area 2, all students of color, American Indian, and free and reduced lunch students will have equitable access to experience. Our goal will be to increase our diverse certified staff from 0 in 2020, so last spring we had 0, to at least 1 in 2023. This is actually something MDE suggests we do, is to at least make sure we're growing that number. QComp goals, we've approved those earlier this year. So it's also important to note that each building has additional goals. Sorry, I know that's fast and furious, but any questions about the World's Best Workforce Report or data that you think needs to be included in there? Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to encourage everyone to check out the full meeting, the more advanced version, more detailed version of that on November 23rd, 6 p.m. I
Correct.
think we'll keep that. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schneider. We're up to item number 9 for our new business. And our personnel items, we have a couple of new hires. BRE Special Ed Paraprofessional Skylar Smith and BRE Special Ed Paraprofessional Kylie Pagan. Is there a motion to approve those 2 new hires?
Motion by LeBlanc to approve Skylar Smith and Kelly Pagan as
There's a motion.
hires.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is recognition of volunteer coach girls basketball, Anna McCosh. Is there a motion to approve that recognition of volunteer coach?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is we need to adopt a resolution for the Minnesota State High School.
We need to field the
Oh, I'm sorry.
resignation then.
I skipped one. Leaves and requests. Maybe I just didn't want to let her go. So, we do have one resignation, middle school, high school administrative assistant, Andrea Lucen. Is there a motion to approve that resignation?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second by LeBlanc.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next is to adopt the resolution for the Minnesota State High School League Grant A.
This
This
is
is-
an annual thing, so.
And this helps,
Offset our expenses.
sure. Okay, is there a motion to adopt that resolution?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote since this is a resolution. Amanda, you will go after me. So Jeremy?
Jeremy LeBlanc, yes.
Jeremy Corner, yes.
Sonia Peterson, yes.
Sharon Rupp, yes.
Amanda Lisi, yes.
Ron Winter, yes.
Motion carries. Next is approve the YME letter of agreement for the coaches and advisors. Is there a motion to approve that YME letter of agreement for the coaches and advisors?
LeBlanc will make the motion to approve the YME letter of agreement for coaches and advisors.
Thank you, and I will second that. So there's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Next item is our resolution designating combined polling places. I believe this is an annual resolution to combine the normal general election, state election polling places into one polling place if we were to have a special election. Because it
Correct.
saves on cost to operate the multiple polling places, correct? So is there a motion to approve the resolution designating combined polling places?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, this is a resolution, so we'll do roll call vote. Start with Mr. LeBlanc.
Jeremy LeBlanc, yes.
Jeremy Corner, yes.
Sonia Peterson, yes.
Sharon Rupp, yes.
Amanda Lisi, yes.
Ron Winter, yes.
Motion carries. Next action item is movie licensing USA Consortium purchase renewal. Mr. Schneider, help me out and explain this one a little bit.
Oh, so what this is this allows us to be able to show movies without being in violation of copyright laws, because otherwise we could not show those movies. So
like
it
during
could
a
even
class
be a
period.
chunk of a movie. It could be a Netflix documentary. This enables us to do that.
I understand. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the movie licensing USA Consortium purchase renewal?
I'll make that motion.
There's a motion, is there a second?
LeBlanc will second.
There's a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Schneider, is this something that we do every year for this?
It's a 3-year contract.
3-year?
And so
Okay.
this is just the year to renew it.
Okay, thank you.
I know it says agreement attached. What is it per 3 years? I missed that somewhere in there.
The license renewal?
I'm looking at it.
Let me dig in.
It's on the second attachment, I think.
It is $2,022
For 3 years
for 3 years.
per building?
Nope, 1,011 per building.
Okay.
Okay, good question. Any other questions? Any discussion? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Hearing no other discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 10, we're up to our discussion items.
Can we add action item 9.6 to approve the audit? Probably needed a motion to add that.
So is there a motion to add item 9.6 to approve the audit that was presented tonight? We'll move that, need a motion to move that to an action item.
I'll make a motion to move tonight's audit to an action item.
Okay, thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. So we will act on that action item right now to approve the audit as presented by Hoffman Probst. Is there a motion to approve the audit?
I'll make the motion to approve the audit that was presented tonight.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Now on to our discussion items. A special board meeting to canvass school board election results. And we can do this either Thursday or Friday of this month. It can be done through Zoom if we choose. It can be done pretty much any time of day if we choose.
We just
So-
need a quorum, which would be
Just need
4
quorum.
members.
So we talked about maybe Thursday before incident command. We could do early Thursday morning. We could do early Friday morning. We could do.
Yep.
Does anyone have a
Noon.
preference? Does anyone have a preference when they would not be available? I don't think it would take long.
No, usually about 5 minutes.
And it's
5
Zoom, you
minutes.
said, correct?
Sorry?
It's Zoom?
Zoom. We could do
Correct.
meeting?
We would share everything with
Do
you, and it
Zoom?
would be conducted via Zoom.
If we have to do like the 7:30 on Thursday morning or 7:30 on Friday morning, that would work for me. I would not be able to make it Thursday evening.
I would be okay with the 7:30 Zoom meeting.
Works for me.
7:30?
7:30.
7:30
Thursday?
Thursday or Friday? Which works best, folks?
Thursday.
Let's just do Thursday.
I can do either.
Okay, thank you. So 7:30 Thursday?
You have all the information we need by Thursday? It says by the
Yep, we will have it.
Okay.
I believe they're saying we will have it Tuesday afternoon.
Thursday morning.
Okay, we'll set that special board meeting Thursday, November 12th, 7:30 a.m., a Zoom meeting, and you'll be able to send out the invite, send out the information for the meeting?
Yep.
Next item is hybrid learning definition.
Okay, so I've tried to share information with you folks about the definition for hybrid learning, and really, to me, it's just a matter of language. We don't necessarily, we do need to change our hybrid learning model, but we don't necessarily have to change what we're doing. Okay, so the confusion is when we have been in hybrid learning so far. I'll just use our elementary as an example. The elementary has come every day. They have had enhanced spacing and other protocols, capacity protocols that they have implemented. But that's not what MDE is saying is true hybrid learning. It must also include a component of distance learning for every kiddo. So students must have at least 1 day of total distance learning per week to call that a hybrid model. Does that make sense?
Not really. I mean, it doesn't-
Elementary kids, if we went back to hybrid, would have to be distant learning 1 day a week. Because right
Correct.
now, they're hybrid, but they're in the classroom 5 days a week.
Correct, but let's be clear, MDE is not saying that we have to use that as we have to use hybrid. They're saying if you're going to use in-person learning, like what we're doing at BRE, we will call it in-person learning, but in the notes or the annotations, we will put with enhanced health protocols such as social distancing and decreased capacity.
Makes sense to me. Can we also use the Friday afternoon then, too?
No, it's got to be a whole day.
It has to be a
that
whole
was
day.
my first question I sent off to them. So we'll have to, change our hybrid learning plan to reflect it, but nobody's saying we have to use that hybrid learning plan.
It's suggested, but it's not something we have to do.
We have to change our hybrid plan, but we don't have to use it.
Correct. So if
Or
we,
what we call it. Right?
What's that?
It's not so much.
No, the
what we
hybrid
call
will
it.
still stay hybrid. In-person will still stay in person. So I use a great example. So Lakeview has been in hybrid all year long. Well, kind of so have we, for our elementary kiddos. We're going to call that in-person learning. That's what's got to be entered into the portal. And if it's not done that way, they're going to call us and just ask us to correct it. So we're communicating accurately with the rest of the state, our neighboring districts, and our own patrons, students and parents. Does that make sense?
I think that'll actually
So I have a
match what's kind of
question.
already been listed
So
on
if
MD's website.
we just changed our hybrid learning model to allow them to go home early Friday, so that's not going to no longer happen. So the kids are going to be with the elementary teachers in the elementary building every day of the week, all day long.
No, even in person, because we have those students that will also be learning in distance learning on Friday afternoons, we are going to stop instruction at 12:30.
Okay.
No matter what.
Okay.
And that's our way of meeting the new executive order and giving our teachers time to prepare for distance learning. Excuse me.
Jeremy had a question too.
Has MDE kind of already been doing this on their own? Because when you look at their website and they've got that page that shows what schools and what model, it's if you look at YME, it says we've been in person for the elementary. So this would already reflect what they're doing. They just want us to report it to them properly. Is that what I'm hearing?
So when did you check it?
Last week.
Okay, we would have made the change last week because
Okay.
the definition came out that week.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that, or I maybe heard that page was there, but I never looked at it before until last week.
We're the ones that go
Okay.
into the portal.
Okay.
So I say we. Denise does it
Denise
for
does
me.
it. So it's basically just what we're reporting to the state,
Correct.
but we don't really have to make any changes in students.
Nope.
in the
We don't
building.
ever have to use a hybrid plan.
Sure. Just what we're
Yeah.
calling
Now,
it to the state.
our other neighboring districts, many of them actually have a true hybrid. Like Montevideo, McRae, and RCW actually have true hybrids. And Lakeview and I think Canby their hybrid is every day. Kind of like what we were doing at BRE and our middle school.
So let's go back to the beginning of the school year when you presented the models. And you said, we really don't have to do anything different for the elementary for the hybrid or the in-person. But we're just calling it something different because the state defines it different, correct?
Correct. So they're correcting what I said at the beginning of the year. And
Okay.
now that hybrid learning model that we have out there is no longer accurate. And we'll get that corrected and run by you guys, you folks, in December.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions on that? Okay, then we'll move on to activities during COVID-19.
So last week at our incident command team, there was some discussion about whether that was the platform or the area that should be used to decide whether we are in distance learning or whether we are offering activities, sports, or any other activities during distance learning. If you recall, the Minnesota State High School League originally put out the information that if we were in distance learning, we could not offer activities. If we were in distance learning as a result of a local health concerns, that we could not. Well, they walked that back here about 2 or 3 weeks ago with some incidents that happened with some boards and communities. And so they said we could use the scalpel approach to find, not to find numbers, but to look at the information and find out if there is a problem occurring within our activities. So hopefully that gives you enough information, and you folks can share your opinions or thoughts on this.
So I asked the question earlier about, is it written anywhere which group decides to have activities or not? And it really isn't written anywhere. Should it be the board? Should it be incident command? Is it a regional team? Or there really isn't anywhere written, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I think there's
So
a
we
lot of
can
pressure on that
decide.
incident command team. Some members on there just aren't feeling comfortable to make that decision.
Sure.
You know, and they feel like it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, but they feel like it should come from administrative or a board decision to make these decisions.
Don't they feel it's hard to make a decision on putting the kids in school for an education?
Yes, they feel that's a hard decision as well.
But you
But-
get to make that decision.
That's what the command team is there for, so we can make this decision. You know, if we, as a board, don't feel like that's right and we feel like it should come back to the board to make that decision, I don't know if that's something that we can do or not.
So
No matter
Can
what we
you-
do, nobody's going to be happy,
No,
and
not
who
at
sits
all.
on the board, who doesn't sit on the board. We can't make everybody happy.
So can you bear with me while I read directly from the Safe Learning Plan about the role of the incident command team? Okay, so first of all, it originated from the paragraph on determining the learning model to start the school year. That's not where it ends, but that's where it starts. After completing a thorough review of the base learning model in the context of local epidemiology of COVID-19 and assessing preparedness to implement all required health practices, school districts and charter schools must make a determination of the learning model to begin the school year for each school. In making this determination, school districts and charter schools should use their current incident command team or advisory council consisting of school board members, bargaining units, staff, students, and families. School districts and charter schools must report their learning model for each building to MDE before implementation. So that was to start the year. Now, the next step, step 5 there, is monitor the community and school level impact of COVID-19 on a regular basis in consultation with public health to determine if adjustments are needed. If a school district or charter school is considering dialing forward to a less restrictive model than what is required under the Safe Learning Model guidance, it must work with the regional support team to consult with local public health officials, MDH, or MDE as needed. So I meet with them every Thursday. It goes on to say further, in making these determinations, school districts and charter schools should use their current incident command team or advisory council consisting of school board members, bargaining units, staff, students, and families. If the learning model changes, the school district must update the learning model information on the website. I don't know if that clarified anything, but that's where the origin of the incident command team came from.
Sure.
So that, the incident command team is really charged with the learning model, the model. And it doesn't really say, it doesn't address activities then. But we've always, this is such a unique situation. Because if we go by past precedent, yeah, Jeremy, go ahead.
Am I correct in understanding that when it comes to sports and the safe learning plan there, that sports are supposed to follow that guidance in the safe learning plan from the state, correct, Rich? So if
Okay.
we're in a,
Remember they said at the beginning that you shall. And remember 3 weeks ago they said you should use the scalpel approach to determine if you have a problem within your activities.
even if we're in the model that the data says we should be in.
Because then we can look at that scalpel model.
This number,
Scalpel approach.
this week our number is going to be in the 80s. We know that. So per that data, we should be in all distant learning, all buildings.
But again, Jeremy, that is the 2 week, that's the numbers for our community.
Correct.
We need to start looking inside our school district and looking
Correct.
at those numbers.
But as we went distant learning a week ago, we had rising COVID numbers within our building.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Okay. So therefore, we're still allowed to use the scalpel method for activities? Are we understanding this all correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
So that can be interpreted a multitude of ways. Do we have an outbreak in our activities themselves? All right.
Rich, earlier you said about the numbers of last week in our school building. Do you know what they are? I know it's only Monday, but how they're looking like today? Was there how many sick calls today versus, do you have that?
I do apologize because I did not have time to scrub this today. I do know I have more positive cases today than I did Friday. So,
And can you tell me if that's with students as well as staff? Is that students?
okay, let me look and see what I have. And I have some pending testing.
So the scalpel approach is like dissecting the numbers, right? To see if the cases
Yes,
are
in your school
in the activities.
system and in the activities alone.
So for sure, I have one staff member, not necessarily an activity, and one student. That I believe, because I go back and did I count them last week or not?
Right, right.
So I got to do a little subtraction. I know the staff is up
Staff is up from Friday.
from Friday.
So then, just for like a scenario, if we were to be in person this week, we would, again, not have enough staff.
Yeah, it's hard to tell right now, okay? Because being we are in distance learning, we don't necessarily, we'd have to look at those, each building separately. So
I
hate to
understand it's
throw you on the
confusing.
spot here, principals, but do you know if we were in person, would we have coverage?
You would be right now, 2, 3, 4, 5. Tomorrow we come in down 6.
Just in the high school.
Physically here, but like I said, it's a little different here. Some parents or some would be able to work from home. Like I said, if we have a teacher that is quarantined at home, that's still able to teach, we still have to find a sub to cover the kids in
Person.
the
Yep. What we do is we hire a paraprofessional to supervise the classroom, and that's, the state said we can do that.
Okay.
All right, but we still need somebody in that classroom.
So I have 4 certified and 3
I just want to make this as clear as possible for parents to understand. That's where I think there's a lot of parents are getting upset because it's very hard to understand. I mean, it's very confusing and, not saying our school, it's every school. It's
Well,
just very
I had a
confusing.
great conversation with a parent today, and what it came down to is how do I explain to people that I'm towing the line on confidentiality,
Right.
I'm towing the line on how many tests are pending, I'm towing the line on what the healthcare professionals have told me.
Yeah, what can you and can you not
What
say?
can I share with you folks? And so it seems like, sometimes I'm looking at a crystal ball. I'm really not. I kind of have the information, but I can't really share it.
Right.
It's so challenging, and yeah, nothing's black and white.
No.
So one thing to keep in mind, Puddle Jumpers closed today, all right? So there's a great example. If some of our staff members had kiddos there and were close contact, our teacher might have to go home to supervise their own kiddo.
So difficult.
Sharon. Sharon.
So that, yeah, Jeremy.
On October 27th, MDE put out a clarifying guidance on shifting learning models and the implications for activities in athletics. And in there, they reference page 10 of the Safe Learning Plan. Do you remember that, Rich?
Yeah.
Okay. It states a school district is required to be in distant learning, then extracurricular activities must be discontinued, and that in general implementation of distant learning models should occur for a minimum of 1 incubation period, 2 weeks, when there is evidence of substantial, uncontrolled community transmission or significant levels of illness in the school setting. So it doesn't say we have to have both, we have to have one of those.
So when does that scalpel effect come into play?
Well, I think, so one thing to think about, what is significant level of
significant
spread?
levels.
Right.
I mean, but you're right.
They're not really giving you an answer on
Approach, most people were determining that based upon, and you look at some of our neighboring school districts where they have the dashboard there that tells you, we're working on that, but it tells you kind of what's happening. It's not always up to date, but it gives you an idea of what's happening. Does it mean, when we use the scalpel approach, only the number of positive cases or quarantine, or what are we talking about when we talked about impact? We have to stay ahead of it if there's a positive case and we quarantine people.
So did we, Rich, I do believe on Thursday night, we did make the decision on the incident command team to continue the activities.
Correct.
But then at the same point, we said that we kind of wanted to bring it to the board for their recommendation.
Well, okay.
Or-
I heard that they wanted the board to weigh in on who should make that decision, and maybe I misunderstood. I mean, I was just,
No, I think you might be right. Jeremy, do you remember? Either Jeremy?
Yeah, I think we were going to bring it back here for discussion, which is what we're doing tonight. I don't know that we were going to make a decision, but
Because I think that decision has been made for the next 2 weeks, this week and next week, along with the distant learning. The activities have been decided the same.
I think we just decided on activities this week. I don't think we decided for next week, did we, Rich?
If we block
it was not tied in there as a 2-week, but it doesn't mean
Activities
that
wasn't.
it was either. There
Right.
was nothing written in there.
I think-
I'll double check.
Right.
I read that if we locked in for distant learning, then we locked in for the other portion too.
I think another important piece that we're not considering here is our activities and are the teams and coaches and players complying with COVID safe protocol? I mean, I'm looking on social media and I don't see a lot of compliance. I see players face to face without masks on in the gymnasiums and on the fields. And I've heard stories of coaches not wearing masks and people having to be reminded to put them on.
They're
So-
allowed to be on the field without it.
This is off the field. This is on the buses and in other places. They're having to be reminded. I guess I expect our coaches to be setting the examples of wearing masks
And what are,
holding players
what's the
accountable.
recommendations for basketball? Because I know junior high basketball starts on Thursday. Is that wearing the mask on the bench?
Well,
But I'm not, they're not wearing it on the court, correct?
correct, but are they doing that? I don't see it happening. So I think that's
Basketball
something we
hasn't
need to
started,
consider
so-
as well is are our teams complying with this guidance as well? That should be one of our factors in considering, do we allow sports to happen?
It's difficult to stay ahead of it when
Right.
they don't comply. Certainly, our goal is to get all the students back in the building.
Right. I want them to play sports. It's
we
not
all
that I
have
don't
to-
want them to play sports, but
Exactly.
if we're going to play sports, we got to help each other to stay in sports.
Right.
Do it safely.
Right.
So I
That's
think that
actually
it's-
the same message I share during my weekly video too, is folks, you can impact this. Please help us by complying with, and then I go through the list.
So the discussion.
Correction here. YME Middle School, High School will be in distance learning for next week. Please choose the following. So it was a 1-week decision. So it went 53-47.
Close.
Percentages.
Yeah, it's percentage. Next time I'll try and get it so it's number. My apologies.
So the discussion is who should decide about, what group should decide about activities? So you're feeling there's the thought that it should not be incident command. There's the thought that it probably shouldn't be the same as our model. There's
Well-
thought that it should come to the board. If it comes to the board, we're going to be meeting every week.
And then if we're
Is it-
meeting every week, shouldn't we, which I believe that's what Ron was suggesting, and I'm not a board member here, I'm just talking and reiterating points. Ron was saying something about should it align with our learning model? I'm not putting words in your mouth, am I, Ron?
Well, I mean, this discussion's all great, and everybody knows, I hope, where I would stand with sports. But tell you what, I just, I look at the education side of this, and I'm really struggling. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
I think in Governor Walls's address, he mentioned, sports and activities and how important it is that we still offer them, and he thinks it's important that we do.
So you think Governor Walz is saying sports is a priority over education?
No, he did not say that at all.
Okay, well, I'm just,
He felt that it was an important piece of the offering to the students.
He
and I
did.
don't
Um,
disagree.
The next statement he said after that, though, to clarify a little further, was he did say there is frustration that some people are feeling like we're prioritizing sports over education. And I think that's where Ron's frustration at, if I'm hearing him right.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to get both.
Absolutely.
Well, if you can figure that out, do share.
Right.
So I think we're all struggling with that.
Yeah.
What I'm
So,
confused on 10.3 where it says that some of the ICT has discomfort on voting on the activities. So does that mean some of the ICT team doesn't have a discomfort on voting and getting any pressure back from parents on whether their kids are in school or not?
I think they're getting a lot more pressure from vote activities
I would
versus
agree.
school.
So if parents were just as strongly opinionated about sending their kids back to school, would those same people want to kick the can back to the board on how to vote for that also? So if it's okay for them to be a part of this team for many, many weeks, and all of a sudden something pressured comes along, something tough comes along, and they want to bail out of it and kick it back to the board. So this you know, we've already been doing this ICT team where nobody knows who votes on what.
But we haven't been voting on activities this whole time either. This just started, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? We started on activities and
Right.
we had it voted, we voted to stop activities. And then one of the members of the incident command team wanted to get Tim Knapper's
Absolutely.
feel on it. So then we had to re-vote, which totally switched the vote around.
Absolutely.
So, which is fine, but then maybe Tim should be part of the incident command team every single week if we're thinking that we need his input as well.
We do need his input, I feel.
I
And if
agree.
we're talking about
We do.
activities, you need your main voice
Yep,
for
if we're going to be voting on
there.
activities, I agree. I think we should have Tim on the,
You should be a part of it.
ICT team as well, if he's willing and able. Because it would be good to have his input too. Rich, is that something that we could ask him if he would be available? I just feel like if we're going to make the decision for sports,
I think we need to go one step farther and back to what we did originally. And if this team, this ICT team, is not only making a decision for our district and our school and our sports, it needs to be known to the public how they vote. I don't believe that should be a secret cast vote that nobody knows how you're voting.
Well, and it's
we as
not
a
really-
board, Sonia, we as a board, every time we vote, everybody knows how we vote.
but how would we vote on a Zoom meeting? You know, this poll.
Well, we did it before.
But,
I-
but Jeremy, our
Rich.
meetings here are ruled by law, that these are open meetings, and everything we do is in public.
Okay.
The incident command team.
Yep.
I think,
I suppose I'm sure they are open meetings.
No,
No, they're not.
They're not.
could you
Okay,
consider
so-
them a committee meeting
Well,
is
and that
truly what
was
they are.
because and the reason they're not is because some people felt that they were going to get chastised.
Well, then
And there were some people that did feel they already were chastised.
they shouldn't be a part of that team then.
But
I'm not
there-
sure what the benefit to the students would be of knowing how certain people vote.
The people in our district need to know who's aligned with them and who's not.
Why?
So they can call us out?
Why?
You don't get called out as a board member?
And-
Yes, but I think those people in the incident command team would be even called out more if they knew the
Well, then
parents
move-
that
move
served
that
on it,
back
they
to
knew
the
the
board
teachers
then.
that served on it.
I just don't feel the ICT, the incident command team should be a silent vote. I think it should be something, you're making one of the biggest decisions we have in the district right now.
I
Whether we
agree.
send our kids back to school or we keep them at home. That's one of the biggest things we got out there, and it's being decided by a team that nobody knows how they vote on stuff, rather than a school board that
So
was
can we
voted in.
share the poll numbers? I mean,
It's,
The final results or who voted?
yes. No, the final results, because we don't know versus poll everywhere.
Well, what I'm trying to do is, so when I'm in Zoom, I'm displaying what's happening.
Okay.
I know some people are on their
Yes.
phones and maybe can't
Right.
see that.
Yes.
And I don't, that's why I picked poll everywhere, is so people could watch what was happening. So it could be transparent. Here's last week's vote, 9-8. 9 to keep it, 8 to discontinue. So I flipped it from percent
to
to,
keep sports,
numbers.
to keep the activities.
yeah, to keep them going. It was 14-3 to go into distance learning at the high school. At the middle school, it was 12-3. And at the elementary, it was 14-3.
Okay. So is this voting on activities, is this a new vote, new step in that incident command team?
Well, we tried to
meeting then?
think about how there could be a recommendation for what to do. And really, this is voting, but if you recall, the resolution that we passed said I would make the decision in consultation with the board chair. I said when we did that I would use the incident command team as my source of information. I have never deviated from that. I consider myself to be a man of integrity. I would not just go off and do my own thing. I believe it's my duty to convince those community members that this is in our best interest. They haven't always sided with me, but I've always sided with the ICT.
But initially, we voted but in person, and then that got changed to a
Correct.
silent.
Because
So-
of that, because some people were called out in the public about it.
If they're going to make a decision for this district, or I'll even use my own kids, then I want to know how they're voting. And I think the people in this district need, or
And-
have the right to know that also.
And how does that help your students?
How does that help? Well,
How
it
does
helps the
that- how
parents
does it-
know who's voting on what.
How does it help the
Each individual
students?
person, so you want to know how I voted that night, and you want to know how
Every-
Jeremy voted that night?
Absolutely. Everybody should know how each one of us voted that night.
Tell me how that helps the students.
Well, why wouldn't the school board be a silent vote? Because the district has the right to know how each one of us vote on an individual subject. And what we're talking about is what I feel is one of the biggest things the district has right now. Are we sending our kids back for distant learning? Are we keeping them in person? That's a huge thing. And this team is making that decision for the district. And those parents don't know who's making that call or not making a call for their kids to not have a choice.
Help me understand then how knowing how each individual person votes helps the students of the school. Does it help you as a parent?
It definitely helps me as a
How?
parent.
So why?
What do you mean how?
How would it, okay,
I want to know how each person
so then
votes.
you can email me personally and say, why did you vote this way?
If they have an opinion and they would like to talk to
They
you
should
about
be
it,
in, they should be emailing every person on that board, not just one
I think-
individual
I think that
person.
would really dissuade people from being on the incident command team.
well, if
when
you're
we
going to
need
be
them.
on the team, then you're going to have to buck up and take some phone calls or some
We get
opinions
plenty.
from people.
That's,
I
guess I
I
did see
think
that
that's
as part
okay
of
for us as elected officials. I
Well,
don't think
then
that's
move
okay
it
for
back
volunteers.
to the board, Jeremy. Move it back to the board's decision, not an incident. If that incident command team can't handle the pressure, then move it
I
back
don't
to
think
the
it has
board.
anything to do with the pressure.
That's what this
I just-
says.
Not really. It-
Discomfort. What do you call it then? And it even says
I
pressure.
just feel like when the incident command team was put together, it was to deal with the distant learning, in-person learning, hybrid learning, not to deal with athletics.
But they have
so
for the
my
last couple,
feeling
3
is
weeks.
the incident
Two,
command team.
if that.
That
3 weeks
That
this week.
came out in an executive order from the governor to create that team with the help of the regional support team. That team would decide the model. So getting back to the discussion we're having is about activities. So in order to decide on a week-by-week basis then, if we don't use the incident command team, you want to bring it back to the board so the public knows who is voting for and against having activities. That would take a weekly board meeting.
Sure. And I didn't suggest that it has, I said that the incident command team should have to vote in person so everybody knows where that vote's coming from. And if
I
you don't
just-
feel that they should have to do that, then yes, then they would have to
Yeah,
come
I
back to the
don't
board.
see that there would be, my personal feeling, I don't see that there would be a need for me to know how each individual person on that incident command team voted. It would not, I just want to know the final result. That's
Well,
part of the
I would
democracy.
disagree. I want to know who's voting
So-
my child
so back
on
to- Getting
what they
back
get
to
at.
activities.
Yep.
If you want to bring that to, as a board decision, it would take a board meeting every week. We can do that. Would everybody be willing to
No.
have a weekly board meeting to decide if we're going to have activities the following week or not?
I think this incident command team has a lot, there's teachers on it, the principals are on it, we have parents on it, we have people from different aspects. Staff, yes.
teachers, yep.
But if they're giving guidance on the education, they got to give us guidance on how we handle this. This has got to be addressed from the numbers, regardless.
What do you
We're
mean?
using the incident command team to give us guidance on COVID numbers.
We are
Correct.
giving numbers.
Okay,
If you look at the
yes, and I
charts
agree
that
with
Rich
that.
shares,
I agree with that. But now
during
when
the
it
Zoom
comes
meetings.
to sports, why do we feel we can look the other way as we're talking possibly moving it to the board? Why wouldn't it stay on the incident command team as a discussion? Or to Rich, I don't know how we handle this. The last thing we want to do is create something where we create more bullying and people, we know where people stand on this. I mean, we could beat this to death all night long, and we're not going to get any place.
Agree.
At the end of the day, our kids are still not going to be in school tomorrow, and there's nothing we're going to do to change that right now. So
Yep.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
So just keep it, the incident command team, with the help of Tim Knapper, hopefully, on it on Thursday night, because I do believe, I just looked and it looks like we just decided this week for athletics. Rich, does that sound right?
Yep, just this week.
So then we need to meet again on Thursday night and decide next
If that's
week's,
what you folks want, I can add Tim Knapper to the
next
ICT.
week's future about athletics.
Something to think about during this time then. So with us in distant learning and allowing some of the kids into the building, are those kids going to have contact with their teachers? Are we concerned about teachers around these kids, anything like that at this time?
So you're talking
You're gonna have to be
activities?
more direct with
Well,
you're
what I'm
saying.
asking is if we're going to take basketball coaches and put them out on the court with full teams, are we going to allow kids that are in getting help? We really don't know a description of how we're handling this time. We're in distant learning. We're going to allow some kids to come back in the building. Are those kids going to have time with paras, teachers? Are we concerned about their time around teachers? What I'm trying to get at, Sharon, is how do you feel of taking one of our teachers now and putting with the whole team? And what happens if something breaks from that? We're looking past the education side, which I understand. We want to keep the sports side going. I'm just asking it from the other side.
So you're kind of saying then, if one of those teachers who's also a coach
Yes.
gets COVID, then we're shutting down that team as well?
No, I'm saying, are we going to allow students that are in the school getting help to be around any of the teachers that are in the school at that time for any help? Say you have a math teacher and you have a student here during distant learning, say with an IEP getting some help. Are they allowed to spend time with that teacher, or are they kept away from that teacher?
Because
Because we're worried
they're
about,
also a coach?
no, because we're worried about
He wants
COVID.
consistency.
Are we going to
right?
allow that to happen?
So if we can bring activities in, if we can continue with activities with the athletes exposed to the coach, are we then okay with our special ed students or any of those other individual groups that we talked about or that were mentioned in the Safe Learning Plan having direct exposure to our teachers?
Are we worried about that? I mean, we really haven't had a good explanation on how we're handling this stuff. I mean, we're talking about plans of how we're bringing kids in school. Are we using paras to help these kids, or what are we doing? I mean, what's our process on how we're doing this? As we look at sports, I know we're
So-
lumping a lot together here, but we're so worried about the sports side. I'm going to ask the
So-
question about the kids that are in the school during distant learning getting help. Will
So-
they have?
So anybody that comes into the building is going to
Yes.
have to follow the Safe Learning Plan, which includes masks.
I agree.
Okay, so
And we're not keeping them away from anybody. So say,
they're
I
still
mean,
going to
I
be
could
6
ask
feet
Ryan,
apart.
I mean, who's going to provide the services as we're letting kids in the school? That's what I want to
So you're
ask.
talking activities? Or you're
No,
talking-
I'm talking the education side right now, because it's kind of all
Okay.
going to have to tie in.
So in other
So I-
words, can a para work with the kiddo or
I
a
thought,
teacher?
We don't have very good explanation. That's why I'm asking the question. I mean, what is our process? So like for you, Ryan, so we're going to start allowing kids in during distant learning, limited numbers to get help. Who are they getting help from? Are they allowed to see teachers when they're here? What are we doing?
As of right now, I'm talking with Cindy Lowe. We had talked about that right now they are reporting into their case manager.
Yep.
And then the case manager will work with the paras, will work in a couple different areas to provide support. If they do need to go see the teacher for a question or whatever, then they email or have a phone call, hey, can Brian come down and see you quick to get some help?
And that's allowed.
Yeah, if it's allowed. yes,
Okay,
no,
that's
then-
the only thing I was trying to get out of that whole conversation.
Okay.
Sorry, I was not following, but now I,
wasn't
yes.
either. Sorry.
Because I was
So-
misunderstood in a conversation earlier, so.
So back to activities. So if we can leave that discussion or the decision about with activities, with the incident command, with the help of Tim Knapper. Try that next few weeks. We can bring it back to the board again in December.
Rich, are we able to ask the incident command team, each member how they feel about that? If they're okay with taking that on, voting for athletics every week? Can we?
I'll put it in this week's poll everywhere.
Thank you.
Could they abstain?
You can always abstain. If you listen to my numbers, they didn't always add up to 17. Although it could have been technology problems.
I have troubles with that thing.
He
So
was
that's-
coaching
Once I have the app on
football.
my phone, it's pretty easy.
Well, it's tough when you're on a bus
When
coming
you're on a
back from a
bus.
game trying to listen and vote at
Yep,
the same
he was
time.
coaching football, but we did figure out a way.
Okay. Jeremy, did you have one more comment?
Yeah, I guess I've got a question for the rest of the board, being a member of the ICT team myself. Is this board comfortable with the ICT team using the Scalpel method and deviating from the COVID data numbers to keep sports going in certain instances? Or if the numbers get too high, is this board, would this board rather we stick with the data and not have sports?
Isn't that looked at as a case by case?
It is a
Week by
case by
week?
case, but it's a little
Not something
guidance
we
here
can
because
really decide tonight.
our numbers are going to go high in the next couple weeks. I'm going to lay that out there.
Yep.
We're going to go high. We're going to be over 100 in 2 weeks.
Agree.
So,
Go on, yep.
and it's just going to keep getting worse from there. I don't see it getting better. You can see the writings on the wall. So as we keep going, how comfortable is the board with the ICT team using that Scalpel method?
It's just a matter of
some
time
exceptions
until
for sports.
one of those sports is shut down because of a coach or
Right.
one of the players getting it.
Right. I'm just trying to gauge the board's feelings on that so we can consider that as the team moving forward.
It's a hard,
I'm entirely comfortable with that whole group of people deciding on the learning model, then yes, I would say yes. I'm comfortable with that team also deciding on activities because they're the ones that already are presented with the numbers and the information to decide that. They can then also do, the scalpel and dissect the numbers. Well,
So
I
can
like
we do
that.
the same thing as we look at our distant learning plan? Which, I don't want to go into that right now. I don't think it's worth doing that. I'm just saying, if we're going by numbers and we're using 2-week data, which we've always done, and I know where people stand. I looked at last week's 2-week data. I'm just saying I'm a little confused.
what we have to look inside the school as well, not just our community numbers. We have to look
Yes.
at the school numbers as well.
I agree. And when I listened to the governor's call, which I sat through the whole 7 minutes he was late plus the hour-long meeting, they said right in there, as they open this up, there is going to be cases in the school. You're not going to stop it. There's going to be staff that's
Yep.
going to get sick in the school. You're not going to stop it. What percentage do they throw out that we feel comfortable with? Is it 5%? Is there a number there someplace I thought I saw?
But what happens when we don't have enough substitute teachers to
I
fill
don't
in?
disagree. I don't disagree. I'm just trying to I'm trying to make a point here right now. I want to see sports happen, but I want to see our kids back in school.
Agree. I think every parent wants to see
So,
their kid back in
When
school
we're
after doing
looking at
a
numbers
weekend,
like
2
you're
days of
saying,
distant
I
learning.
looked at last week's numbers, and if we were, we got to get through 2020 somehow here. So, we got to come together. We don't want to We're not going no
I
place
agree.
right now.
Distant learning is not,
We're not going no
you hear
place.
from a lot of parents,
Yep.
it's miserable.
Yep.
But we just have to do what's best right now. It's not the perfect solution. We just
I
have to
just-
keep going like we do every Thursday and look at the numbers and look at how it is in school. And we just have to make sure we have enough substitute teachers because there's no way we can
Correct. Just
have these
remember,
kids in
though,
school without the teachers
Correct.
being there to teach them either.
Just remember the pressure you're feeling from the parents on the sports side. I wish we had the same pressure on the teaching side. I mean,
I hear what you're
everybody's
saying,
okay
yes.
with distant learning because sports is happening. What happened when we had distant learning and there was no sports? I'm confused on where those people went. I'm glad it's not happening, but I'm just saying we need to, so, like we say, everything's a matter of time, so I'm trying to be the optimistic one. So,
Ron, I do believe you're right. Somewhere in the Safe Learning Plan, I remember reading that there are some percentage numbers that are one of the considerations we could use as a metric for picking our plan or our learning model. I don't remember what them numbers are. I just remember reading that there are some.
right, and we can't keep adding all the cases together. I mean, it's got to be active at one time, correct? So as we show numbers of cases in the school, a lot of times we show total numbers to date instead of total numbers during the 2-week span, for
Correct.
instance. I mean,
Well,
We do both.
yeah, we do both.
so
we do both.
I'm just
Just,
throwing that out.
and the reason we do both is so people can kind of keep a running total, because I'll get asked, how many cases have you had so far this year?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep.
Just
I'm
trying
just
to-
throwing that out. I'm just,
I would like to see that scalpel approach used in more detail when it comes to the education side. Where we've gotten very scalpeled about the activities and carving that out as to which ones are good, which ones are bad. But if there is, I don't have a solution for this yet, but if there is a way to use the scalpel approach more with the education side to possibly get groups of students back in, I think it's worth looking into. I agree with Ron. Number one, we want kids back in school.
well, I mean, we got to keep talking about it. I know we can't change it, but we got to talk about it, is all I'm saying. As we have a lot of discussions about sports, if nobody's, and I know you guys are bringing up the education side. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just,
Okay.
so,
Any other discussion on that? This was just discussion, it wasn't an action item, so if we could get Mr. Knapper to come to those incident command teams or weigh in somehow. And for those incident command team members uncomfortable with voting for or against to have activities, that they can abstain. And can we see how that works? Go through a couple weeks and we can revisit? Okay. So then, our next item of discussion is storm damage update.
Okay,
Another
so,
riveting topic.
as if there wasn't enough stress.
Yes.
So I've been still working with SiteLogic, and so we had a big meeting Friday afternoon and went through our proposal. EMC kind of rejected what our two ideas were, and our two ideas were to sign a business or a building services agreement or a professional services agreement between EMC and SiteLogic, so we weren't part of it. EMC said they're not the owner, so they would not do that. So then our other proposal was to do a design-build agreement between EMC and SiteLogic. Again, EMC said they were not the building owner. So hopefully I'm covering everything in here. The proposal by SiteLogic would be to demolish the ceiling in that area, remove anything that could be a health hazard, and then assess what needs to be replaced, order the materials. During that time that it's going to take to get the materials here and to get quotes, they would allow us access to that space. So it might be, so we know the wood floor's got to come up. All right, so the intent would be we could put down another surface. They would put a temporary surface on there. They would also partition that area too. If we wanted to use like the seated area for different classrooms, we would work with them on that. EMC said that was fine. Making sure the advantage of getting that space back is we know we're going to be challenged with sports areas this coming winter season because we relied upon that auditorium for quite a bit. It was the basketball and our dance used it a lot. So having that space back to us in the next few weeks, 3-4 weeks, would give us another area to be able to use for practices.
But without a floor, how's that going to work?
Well, the intent is we think that the tongue and groove will be fine underneath there. And so they would put another surface on top of that. So
No timeline or
what I want to do is then we're still working on an agreement, but SiteLogic's just going to go forward because this is just, we keep kicking the can down the road and it doesn't solve the problem. SiteLogic is going to start, we will get the area assessed for asbestos and mold this week. Get those results back so then they can figure out the extent that needs to be demolished. Not just asbestos and mold and lead also.
And the insurance is okay with this?
Yep.
Okay.
On the percentage? And the percentage?
The percentage at this point, EMC's not going to weigh in on that. We just bill them back for it. What's going to happen is each of those quotes will be approved by EMC, each single one. And then in the end, it's not going to necessarily be that 12%. They believe it's going to be 200,000. EMC said they're not going to weigh in on that, whether that's appropriate or not. I can't get any commitment from them. If we want this thing to go forward in the next year, we're just going to have to go forward.
So without any commitment, if they decide to back out, we're stuck with it though.
With 200,000, yeah. We know they're going to have to cover some of it because they said they would cover the cost of a construction manager.
Yep.
And my thing that I wanted to see, and I can't get EMC or SiteLogic to agree with, is let's carve out how much is design, how much is architecture, how much is engineering, and how much is construction management. That's not the model SiteLogic uses. Well, if I don't go with SiteLogic, we can hunt out there and start all over again if we'd like. That's kind of where I'm at. I told EMC that I'm going to pass on that bill directly from SiteLogic to them. I'll try and get a recording of my meeting so that you folks know that and
When is
get
that
it to
meeting?
them. It wasn't my meeting. It was SiteLogic's.
When is the next meeting? I didn't know there was a meeting Friday. I must have.
There's not another one scheduled.
I'm just saying, I don't want this to be like buying a new car without knowing the price before you buy it.
I will share the contract with you as soon as I get
Yep,
it.
that'd be great. So on the building side, looking at the roof, where are we at with getting that roof buttoned up? I mean, I'm seeing rubber.
I don't know. Last I checked, I thought they were just on the, what do you call the metal flashing on the edge? But anyway,
Okay.
I'll call it flashing.
Yeah, I'm just curious because when I looked up and seen that going into November, I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess I haven't checked with Francis.
Okay.
He's out until Wednesday.
Okay.
I think getting that space back into our area that's usable for us is worth a little expense to us. I don't like spending any more money than we have to, but we also have a music department that's roaming without a home right now. And
But I don't think
maybe
it shouldn't end up being an expense to us.
no, but I think you're right, Rich. We have to move forward and get something going.
Well, I agree. That's
And
why we've had
it
these
may cost us
discussions.
some legal fees to get that 204,000 back, or EMC might, yeah, that seems reasonable after they see the final number.
Is SiteLogic threatened by somebody else doing the work, or they just, where they at?
Site Logic, no. No, Site Logic won't do any of the work themselves.
I know, but even
Oh.
being in charge the way we've talked, I mean, the storm was in July, and I mean, I know where we've fought with insurance, and then we sit with SiteLogic now, and regardless of what we do, we gotta get going. I just wanna see us being careful that we're not spending a whole ton of money in attorney fees because we jumped the gun, we've already waited 6 months or 4 months. So,
There's no commitment.
hopefully the insurance company, I mean, that was that one meeting we had that day. I mean, I thought, man, that guy sat there and seemed like he agreed on everything. And he must have walked out the door and ran back in the ditch. Hour and a half late for the meeting.
Yeah, you didn't make it.
So, we got to go with it, and we just got to hope and pray that,
Do your best. We need the space.
We do.
I know you know that.
Even if they won't 100% commit to something, they should at least give us something that says, yeah, you guys are in a ballpark. You know, I can't believe that.
I'll get that recording and
yeah.
I'll send that off to Scott tonight.
You're talking EMC?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No other discussion on that. I don't see any correspondence. So then our upcoming events, our special board meeting will be November 12th at 7:30 a.m. through a Zoom meeting. And we do need a quorum for that. Middle school, high school virtual day and BRE dismiss at 12:30, November 13th. Our policy committee meeting will be November 16th through a Zoom at 5:30 p.m. Middle school, high school virtual day and BRE dismiss at 12:30 on November 20th. Early dismissal on November 25th at 1 p.m. No school for Thanksgiving break, November 26th or 27th. Middle school, high school virtual day, BRE dismiss at 12:30 on December 4th and December 11th. Next board meeting is December 14th at 6 p.m. here in the Little Theater. Our truth and taxation hearing will also be December 14th in Little Theater at 6 p.m. Okay. The world's best workforce is November
23rd,
23rd,
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
I think we need to do some different meetings on that as we're doing this project. I don't think we need to go like 3 months.
Okay.
I would like to see something here in the next month scheduled. We
Um,
can sit down and do a follow-up.
and
Got a lot to have.
who do you want there, or do you want like Scott, me? What do you?
Well, I think we should have Scott, and you should be there, and Brandy should be there, and whatever else we have in building grounds, just so we, I mean, we have a lot happening, so what I'm saying, to wait till March.
Sorry, I was off.
Okay, so you'll set up a,
Yeah, I'll
And we can
send it
talk-
out.
And we can
Get
talk
that
about
in.
it. I mean, I just think.
Is there certain days that don't work, or
No day works. We just
football's
gotta
wrapping up
schedule it.
here, right?
Yeah, it'll be done by tomorrow,
I'd like to,
Right.
yeah,
at least on the junior high side.
And
And it-
5:30, what works?
that's fine.
Preferably not Mondays.
Okay.
thank you, Amanda. So I just want to say one last thing is that we need to try and recruit substitutes for all areas. I've been trying to talk to people that I know that could be a substitute teacher and doing my best. But needed. Okay, there's nothing else? Call the meeting adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks, Amanda.
Bye, Amanda.
Thank you.